ahead and continue our loop discussions, and we're going to talk about a for loop. There'll be another kind of for loop that we'll learn a little bit later called a for each, but for now let's stick with the for loop. So we created loop 1 and loop 2 classes. Let's go ahead and create a loop 3 class, and we'll call this one loop 3. No main in this one. And I'm going to create a public void method, and we're going to call this for loop. Not going to pass anything in. The for loop has a pretty complicated structure, and probably one of the ones that causes students, especially new students, some form of problems or trouble, or at least some comprehension of the syntax. So I'm going to go through it, and then we're going to talk about what's going on to it. So there is the obviously keyword for, and there's going to be an open and closing brace. One of the most common things people do is put a semicolon after the for loop, which doesn't break anything, but it doesn't work the way you would expect. So we do not want a semicolon after the for. We want a for, open and closing parenthesis, and then your open and closing brace. Inside of here, there's 3 components that goes in the parentheses. One is going to be your initialization. So we're just going to go ahead and initialize an integer, and we're going to set it equal to 0. Okay? So that's just like we created our own value. Next, we need to have our logic check. What are we actually checking? And we want to see, as long as x is less than 5, we want to keep going. And the last part is our incrementer. Each time we go through the loop, when we did a for loop or a do loop or a while loop, we had to purposely make sure we incremented it so that it didn't get caught into an endless loop. So here we need to have an incrementer, and what we're going to do is use a shortcut for it. We're going to take the current value of x and add 1 to it. So it's going to do this plus plus piece to it. So whatever the value of x is when it gets back up here, add 1 to it. So inside of here, we're going to do a system out, print line. Actually, let's do a print. We haven't done print recently, so let's go ahead and do a print, which means we don't go down to the next line. So we're going to do x, and let's go ahead and do a dash between them. So what this is going to do is going to print out x, and it's going to stay on the same line when we print it out. So the way this is going to work, it's going to set x equal to 0. It's going to say, is x less than 5? It is. So we're going to come down here, we're going to print out the 0, and then it's going to come back up here, increment it to 1, and then it's going to come back here and do the check again. So is 1 less than 5? Yes. So go ahead and print out 1. They'll stay on the same line with the dash. Then let's come back up here and go to 2, 2 less than 5, print. 3, 3 less than 5, print. 4, 4 less than 5, print. 5, 5 less than 5, no. So I should get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 with dashes between that. And since I learned my lesson last time, when we're done, we're going to go ahead and do a print line, and we're going to say over. So we're going to just go ahead and print out the word over inside of that, so we know we're done with the various things. Okay, so we have a for loop. We initialize the value to 0. We check to see if 0 is less than 5. We're going to increment when we get done with it. So it's going to come here, print it out, increment it, check the value, increment it, check the value, increment, check the value, boom, 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 until we get to the various pieces. Okay, so I create this non-static method in loop 3, which means I'm going to need an object. So let's go ahead and open up start. I'm going to comment out all the rest of these ones up here. And we're going to do loop 3. We're going to call it loop equals new loop 3, and we're going to use our loop to see what objects or what methods Eclipse says we have access to, and there's our for loop one is one of the options in the drop down. Now if you get an error on the loop here, so let me go ahead and do a quick backtrack here. So what happened here is I created an object called loop up above. I cannot create another object called loop. It says duplicate local variable already exists. So I cannot just go ahead and make that loop variable. That's why I commented out up here. You cannot reinitialize or create another value of the same name. Even if it's different data types, you just don't make the same name. So you got to be somewhat creative on your naming convention. But what we got here now is I commented out loop, so I can make a new object called loop. We're using the loop3 class, and then that loop3 class has a method called for loop, which is right there, which is going to run our application. So if I run this, boom, 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 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then over. So I got to the end of it, and everything's good to go. Now I can manipulate this for loop a little bit. I can set this equal to 5. I can see if x is greater than 0, and I can also do minus minus, which means go backwards now. So this will count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I can also do less than or greater than or equal to. So I can now go all the way down to 0 for this one. So it'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 0 is equal to 0. So I'll run it one more time. X will go to -1. And -1 is not greater than or equal to 0. So I will not actually print out the -1. But if I go ahead and run this again, go ahead and save it and run 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. It went all the way down to 0 because I added in that less or greater than or equal to sign for that particular loop. So for this one, if I don't put the equal sign in there, when I run it, it's actually going to stop at 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It doesn't put the 0 in that piece of it. So that's a for loop. There are tons of different things you can mix and match to make this do different things, but the most common ones are what we just showed, either counting forward or counting backwards. If you know how many times you want to loop through it, a for loop's great. If you don't know how many times you're going to end up looping through it, a while loop or a do loop makes the most sense. So that's not 100%, but that's enough to get started with understanding when you would use a for loop. Okay. Thank you very much.